What if Hiruzen Sarutobi survived Orochimaru's attack and, instead of hiding the truth, acknowledged Naruto's greatness as the fourth Hokage's son? Let's dive into how this would reshape Naruto's destiny. Ch1. Recognition. Konohagakure no Sato. 3 days after the invasion. Naruto's eyes were fixed in an angry glare as he stormed through the village in a brisk pace, uncaring towards the villagers as he brushed past them with his shoulders. Today he wasn't in the mood to be their whipping boy, in fact he was pissed off to the point he would most likely lash out violently if anyone pushed his buttons. It had been 3 days since the invasion and Naruto had just about fully recovered from his fight against Gaara. Having passed out minutes after the Sand siblings' retreat, Naruto had very little to no recollection of what happened. There was an invasion, that much was obvious, and Hiruzen Gigi had fought his old student, Orochimaru of the Sannin, the very same Sannin who had completely fucked up Naruto's chakra pathways during the second stage of the Chunin exam. When Naruto woke up, he found out the invasion had been defeated and that Hiruzen had forced his student in a stalemate. Orochimaru had decided to cut his losses and flee. Naruto was relieved to hear that. He knew the old man was powerful, but he was also old and fragile at age of 69. His stamina couldn't have been anywhere near Orochimaru's. He was also very confident he had earned his promotion. After all, not only had he defied the odds and defeated Hyuga Neji, he had also defeated Sabaku no Gaara and saved both his teammates, allies, and the village in the process. For the entire first day after the finals, Naruto stayed home in case he would get his notice of promotion by Messenger Hawk. None came. Naruto gave it another day, but no message came his way. It wasn't until he stepped outside to buy some groceries today, when he heard news that the promotions had already been handed out. Did you hear? Uchiha Sasuke defeated that red-haired demon from Suna. He saved us, I bet he's going to get a promotion. I heard Shikaku's kid already got the bump to Chunin. Looks like the genius lives on in the next generation, huh? They should just make Uchiha-san a Jonin already. Did you see his lightning jutsu during the finals? It was amazing. I heard he's the one who summoned Gamabunta-sama. I thought Gamabunta-sama only obeyed Jiraiya-sama. Naruto clenched his fists tightly. The old man was going to get an earful today, and anyone who got in the way of him saying what he had to say better bring backup. Naruto ran up the last steps to the Hokage Tower and was met by 2 Chunin guards he vaguely knew, Izumo and Kotatsu. They were alright as far as Naruto knew. They weren't like the majority of the village populace, and were genuinely nice guys, but today he didn't care about that. He couldn't bring himself to care about what anyone thought today. Hey, you're that Naruto kid, right? Izumo and Kotatsu held up their hands as Naruto was about to walk past them. Hokage-sama just got out of the hospital, and he's asked to be left alone for some time. He doesn't want to be bothered by anyone today. Move, Naruto barked the order with visible aggression. Kotatsu took offense to that. Watch your tone, kid. Show some respect to your superiors. Move, please. Izumo eyed Kotatsu for his reaction and then turned to Naruto. Hey, whatever it is that's got you pissed off doesn't give you the right to barge in here and do as you please. Naruto glared at both of them with intensity. I am 2 seconds away from beating the crap out of both you. His voice shook with barely restrained anger and the pair of Chunin flinched, more taken back by his anger than intimidated. If you want to keep this up, prepare yourself for a few broken bones because I am done with taking your shit. Got it? The Chunin shared a glance and silently parted, allowing Naruto to gain entry. What the hell was that about? Kotatsu shrugged. It's his funeral if he wants to piss off Hokage-sama. The Hokage's secretary stood up out of her chair and adjusted her glasses with a rigid posture. How did you get in here? Nobody is supposed to bother Hokage-sama today. Noticing she was being completely ignored, the secretary shouted after him. Hey! Naruto ignored her and walked through the double doors, and slammed them to a close behind him. Gigi, I need to talk to you for a minute. Sarutobi Hiruzen sat behind his desk and was overlooking some paperwork. He was wearing his cage robes under which his entire body was wrapped up in gauze, even his hands. The shinobi no Kami looked up and smiled at Naruto, apprehensive of his sudden barging in but wasn't surprised in the least. Naruto had never been one for manners. It was rather refreshing really. Instead of the usual pleasantries and veiled meaning behind select choice of words, Naruto said what he wanted when he wanted. Hello there, Naruto-kun. You seem upset, what is it? Everything. Naruto took a seat without invitation and then got up immediately. He was too pent up to sit down and thus began to repeatedly walk from wall to wall in the Oval Hokage office. You know, Gigi, I used to believe you when you told me things got better when I was a kid. You always said that one day people wouldn't hate me, and I believed you. I didn't know why they hated me back then, but I believed you. Hiruzen nodded slowly. Did something happen, Naruto-kun? No. Yes. Naruto wasn't making a lot of sense right now. He tended to ramble whenever he was this frustrated. You know, it's been my lifelong dream to take that hat of you so everyone will acknowledge me, and you can live the rest of your days in peace, don't you, Gigi? I sure do. Naruto took a deep breath, knowing he needed to stop this tantrum if he wanted the old man to take him seriously. Gigi, he said after a moment of silence, not once since I found out I was the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, have I resented the people for what they did or felt. I understand that they lost people they cared for in the attack, but that doesn't excuse them for the way they treated me my entire life, does it? No, it does not, Naruto-kun, Hiruzen affirmed with a grave expression. Naruto hadn't brought up the Kyuubi since the night he found out he was its container. Thus the Sandaime knew whatever it was that was bothering him, had to be serious. Still, I never resented them for never liking me as person. I mean, I didn't exactly make things better by pulling pranks on them, but this time they crossed the line, Gigi. I'm so angry I feel I'm going to explode if I don't get this off my chest. Please, Hiruzen urged him to continue. Why didn't I get the bump to Chunin, Gigi? You know I deserve it more than anyone. Naruto slammed his hands on the Hokage's desk. It wasn't an aggressive move on his part, but merely a way to vent his frustration. The Hokage raised an eyebrow at Naruto, prompting him to realize who he was speaking to. I'm sorry, Gigi. I haven't reviewed who gets promoted and who doesn't, Naruto-kun, but you seem to have a good idea who did. I've been out of commission for a few days after the botched invasion. The council has taken it unto themselves to make my job easier. Naruto took a deep breath and exhaled. He was getting his nerve back. Nara Shikamaru got promoted and I didn't. All because he surrendered when he knew he had already lost the match. Obviously he's going to give up if he's out of energy. That doesn't show him cutting his losses through strategic thinking, that shows him being logical. If he hadn't surrendered, that sand chick would have just killed him. Don't get me wrong, Shikamaru helped out big time when we went after Sasuke, but why did he get a promotion over me? I beat my opponent and then defeated Gaara, yet I didn't get promoted. I don't get it. Hiruzen eyed Naruto impassively, betraying no emotion through his calculative brown eyes as his minds went through the possibilities. Surely Shikaku's son would not have been promoted because he knew when to give up. That was common sense and logic. Of course, strategies and tactics were imperative prerequisites for any great shinobi, but Naruto had plenty of that, and he had proven so in his fight against Hyuga Neji, who was a fearsome opponent to say the least, and with a year's worth of experience over Naruto. Had the council cleared Shikaku's son for promotion just for that, because he was the son of Nara Shikaku? It wasn't a pleasant thought for the aged Hokage, not in the slightest. That's not all of it, Gigi, Naruto continued. Everyone is giving Sasuke credit for beating Gaara when it was Emi who did that. I beat Gaara after Sasuke got his ass handed to him, and it was Emi who saved Sakura-chan. What's crazy is that everybody seems to forget Sasuke didn't sign the summoning contract with Toads, so how the hell would they explain Gamabunta's appearance? Aha! It became increasingly clear to the Hokage how much Naruto had done to protect Konoha whilst he was fighting his former student, Orochimaru. Granted, Sabaku no Gaara could have been taken out by his Anbu if necessary, but for Naruto to have faced the Ikibi Jinchuriki so soon after having faced against Hyuga Neji who did considerable damage. I'm sorry for throwing this tantrum at you, Gigi. From the looks of it, you stopped listening and I can't really blame you, so I'm just going to go and figure out what I'm going to do next. If Sasuke doesn't get promoted, then at least Team 7 isn't split up and we can try again next year. Naruto gave the Hokage one of his rare bows. It was awkward and unrefined, but Hiruzen knew it was meant as a heartfelt apology. Naruto otherwise never engaged in formality. The blonde then turned to open the door when Hiruzen called after him. Naruto-kun, wait. Hiruzen rose out of his chair as Naruto turned to face him. I am terribly sorry your performance was overlooked, Naruto-kun. However, I did observe your match against Hyuga Neji, and I am well aware of your triumph over Sabaku no Gaara. Where are you going with this, Gigi? Naruto-kun, I have always known you will one day become a splendid shinobi worthy of assuming the mantle of Hokage. Your mastery of the Kage Bunshin along with your performance during your A-ranked mission in Nami no Kuni, coupled with the fact Jiraiya speaks highly of you is all the evidence I need to know you are well on your way. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You know Ero Sennin. Hiruzen gave a croaky laugh at the nickname. Jiraiya is one of many students I have taught, Naruto-kun. I raised him along with Orochimaru as part of my first genin team. Naruto's eyes bulged comically and Hiruzen gave another croaky laugh. I assume he did not mention I was his sensei. Now then, Naruto-kun, I hereby promote you to the rank of Chunin. I will be taking care of the paperwork. Hiruzen pulled a grimace as he said it. You go home and await further instructions. Gigi, thank you. You won't regret promoting me, I promise. 2 hours later, Naruto's apartment. When Naruto got home he was so excited and anxious he didn't know what to do with himself, so he decided to clean up his apartment and then his equipment. He had just placed down the last of his polished kunai in a neat row when a ticking noise caused him to avert his gaze to the window where a messenger hawk-eyed him and squawked demandingly. Naruto got to his feet and quickly opened his window, allowing the bird to stand on one leg on his windowsill as it extended its remaining limb. It squawked again, as though it had somewhere else to be, so Naruto quickly took the red scroll of its leg. Thanks. Naruto went to pet the hawk, but it nibbled at his hand impatiently, so he opened the window again and got it to leave. Go on then. Naruto pulled a sour expression, shooing the bird away just as impatiently. The winged animal tuned and left with one last squawk as he closed the window behind him and sat down on his bed. Naruto took a deep breath and exhaled shakily as he unfurled the scroll with an anxious sense of excitement. Poof! As soon as Naruto unfurled it, a column of smoke burst out, and when it cleared, Naruto noticed his bed and floor were cluttered with a lot of assorted shinobi equipment. Of course, the one that immediately caught his eye was his Chunin flak jacket and a tanto attached to a belt next to it. Naruto didn't notice his breathing had gone shallow, he could hardly believe it. Quickly, the blonde discarded his orange jacket and put on his Chunin flak jacket with a sense of glee and exhilaration. Fuck yeah! Naruto jumped excitedly with a fist pump and quickly grabbed the tanto, and made swishing movements with it. He wasn't skilled in kenjutsu, not in the slightest, but at the moment he did not care, for he had been promoted. This is awesome. Naruto unsheathed the tanto and noted immediately that though it had been cleaned thoroughly, the blade itself was rather old. Naruto frowned. Why didn't the old man give him a new one? The train of thought had him inspect his supposedly new flak jacket, and as expected, he noticed it was noticeably different. Its mesh was more durable, it had pointy shoulder pads, and the body armor frame under the fabric was both heavier and stronger than he thought it would be. Upon further inspection, Naruto retrieved an envelope from his pocket and quickly opened it. There were 4 documents within it. The first one was a neatly folded sheet of paper with the Konoha stamp on it and read, "Formal Notice of Promotion." Naruto unfolded the letter and began to read the following out loud. You, Naruto. It has come to our attention that you have performed admirably during your missions, and coupled with your performance during the Chunin exam, adequate mission success rate and skill set, we have deemed you qualified to join the ranks of Konoha's Naiju Shotai of the Border Patrol Guard. 2. The Border Patrol Guard is a department dedicated to homeland security missions in order to monitor foreign influences in Hai no Kuni. More will be explained to you upon assignment. You are expected to report in Briefing Room 1 in the Hokage Tower, tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Your platoon leader will assign you to a team and further inform you of your duties. Signed, Shinobi Assignment Department. With a sense of euphoria, Naruto reread the letter another 2 times as he sat down on his bed. I can't believe it, I actually got promoted. Gigi pulled through for me. Naruto smiled, making a mental note to treat the old man to a meal sometime. Noticing he was subconsciously crumpling the remaining 3 letters, Naruto folded his notice of promotion and placed it back in the envelope. Took a look at the second one, it appeared to be a receipt of sorts. Recipient, you, Naruto. Ninja rank, Chunin. Ninja registration, 012607-1. The recipient has been charged with the following. 1 SI flak jacket, 1 SI tanto, 3 pairs of SI shinobi uniform W2 long-sleeved shirts and 1 short-sleeved shirt, 2 pairs of SI bodysuit, 1 pair of SI shinobi sandals black, 3 packs of SI kunai X25, 3 packs of SI shuriken 50, 1 pack of SI explosive tags mild, 1 pack of SI makebishi 150, 3 rolls SI sealing scrolls 10 feet. Note: SI equals standard issue. The recipient is hereby reminded to dutifully take adequate care of all equipment issued and is expected to vigilantly maintain all equipment issued. Signed, Konoha Armory Administration. Naruto smiled to himself and took a look at all his new equipment with a content feeling. Gigi must have cleared him for this equipment, and Naruto was immensely grateful as he sure as hell he couldn't have afforded it otherwise. Naruto decided to take the note to heart and began to pick up his newly issued equipment, and laid them out on his bed, cataloging items by purpose, and then picked up the last 2 letters. One was a blank square sheet of paper and the other was a letter written in the familiar, neat calligraphic handwriting of the Sandaime, thus Naruto took a look at it. Naruto, I presented your case to the Shinobi Council and they realized you did Konoha a great service in successfully participating in an A-ranked mission given by your sensei in time of war when Konoha needed you most. By the time you have gotten over your excitement, I gather you will have realized you are now a Chunin and thus one significant step closer to one day kicking me out of my office. On that note, you must have noticed by now your Chunin flak and tanto are not quite standard issue. This is because those were mine when I was a Chunin during the First Great Shinobi War, and thus are somewhat different. Naruto, I would like you to have those mementos to remember me by when the day comes I will no longer be around. Now that you are a Chunin, you will be expected to participate in tougher missions and in some cases lead squads of your own. As we both should realize by now, it is time you step up your training. I do not mean to insult you, Naruto, but you must make sure you branch out in the shinobi arts and not just for yourself but for the people that will depend on you on the battlefield. I have taken the liberty to have you issued with standard issue equipment for all Chunin and above and have used up one of your sealing scrolls to include a variety of jutsu and chakra control exercises I believe you should take the time to learn. The other notes included in this envelope will be a receipt of all equipment issued to you and a special sheet of chakra paper that will determine what your primary affinity is. When a shinobi reaches the rank of Chunin, we present them with a sheet of chakra paper so that they can determine their nature type, or types so that they can decide to specialize in the element they are strongest in. It is highly recommended you have gained some form of mastery over at least 2 nature types to reach the rank of Jonin. You will be expected to report to the Hokage Tower tomorrow afternoon for briefing and team assignment. Please refrain from emulating your sensei and be on time, first impressions are crucial. I know you will make me proud, Naruto. You are the future Hokage after all. Signed, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato. Naruto reread the letter again and again, taking in every word as he sat down. The old man believed in him. He truly believed in him. That he could one day become a truly splendid shinobi and assume the mantle of Hokage. In his letter, the old man expressed nothing but expecting his best efforts and dedication. He didn't feel insulted in the slightest about the old man telling him to branch out more. Naruto knew he needed more jutsu in his arsenal. He realized that when he saw Sasuke had been taught the Chidori, but now that was the furthest on his mind. This wasn't about showing up Sasuke anymore, Naruto wouldn't allow it to be. The old man had put his faith in Naruto and he couldn't let him down now, not ever. Naruto rose out of bed and took off the flak jacket and tanto attached to his midriff by a utility belt, made sure he placed them down neatly on top of his new attire. Naruto then reached for his sealing scrolls and found one labeled with the kanji for jutsu, and unfurled it. Poof! As with the previous scroll, several smaller scrolls popped into existence, each with their own label marked on them. There were 4 different scrolls, one simply read, Chakra Control, Read, and the remaining 3 read, Genjutsu, Ninjutsu, and Fuinjutsu. Naturally, Naruto reached for the ninjutsu first as it was his strong suit and upon unfurling it, he noticed the first jutsu on the scroll was the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Confused, Naruto began to read and noted it was copied straight from the scroll of sealing he had stolen the night he graduated. As he skimmed down, he noted with a deadpan expression that the Hokage had underlined information he hadn't taken the time to read the first time around. Shadow clones will transfer all of their memories and experience upon being destroyed or cancelled out, thus making them perfect for reconnaissance and other applications, including ninjutsu training. Fuck. Naruto stayed up late in the night going over all the jutsu he had read about. The old man included some easy chakra control exercises and some interesting applications, such as bending metal to repair a weapon, 2 jutsu of each element, various other jutsu and basic fuinjutsu so that Naruto could secure his equipment. By the time he went to sleep, Naruto could have kicked himself 1,000 times as he couldn't believe how deprived he had been. The Kage Bunshin alone was a goldmine and the Hokage had written a note, stating Naruto was one of very few that could use the technique on a large scale as his reserves were incredible and he never seemed to suffer from mental fatigue when his clones were dispelled in large quantities. The old man also urged Naruto to become more strategic how he used the technique and recommended devising basic tactics. The sly old fox even included a new application to the Kage Bunshin Naruto didn't know about before. Naruto also found out his element was wind, which was great since the Hokage had included 2 powerful futon jutsu Naruto could get the hang of in mere hours and mastery over in the span of days. Naruto was rather excited to get started but reminded himself he was expected to be more responsible, and thus set his alarm clock and went to bed, though it had never taken him as much effort to fall asleep. The next day, Naruto woke up early and for the first time in his life felt completely awake mere seconds after opening his eyes. Emerging from the bathroom, he got dressed in the standard Chunin uniform he had hung to his closet. Naruto felt pride and sense of achievement as he eyed himself in the mirror, pulling on his metal-plated gloves as he did it. Naruto picked up his headband and took of his blue cloth, opting for a black one instead as it matched his attire. No longer did he look like an obnoxious eyesore. Naruto knew he was done with his attention-seeking antics the moment he put down that letter last night. It was kind of refreshing, he realized, as he pulled his utility belt over his waist, attached his pouches and holsters and strapped his tanto to the small of his back. Naruto looked into the mirror once more, astounded by the sudden change in appearance. He seemed so different, he definitely appeared more presentable. Maybe even a little older and taller, now that he didn't wear his usual bulky garb. Moreover, for once, he actually looked like a professional. Minutes later, Naruto was running over the rooftops towards the Hokage Tower. He noticed he was turning quite a few heads from both villagers and shinobi once they got over the new appearance. Naruto paid it no heed, he would have loved to boast usually but he was short on time and wanted to make a good impression, thus he made sure to hurry up. Naruto arrived at the Hokage Tower approximately 15 minutes before his briefing was about to start. The Chunin from yesterday looked at him with raised eyebrows and expressions that conveyed mixed feelings. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, feeling a sense of embarrassment for losing his cool yesterday. Hey, sorry about yesterday, Naruto apologized, bowing his head ever so slightly. It wasn't really his thing and the Chunin knew it, but they made no comment. I was angry but I shouldn't have taken it out on you. Kotatsu eyed Izumo and nodded, smiling. It's alright. You're that Uzumaki kid, right? Naruto nodded and both Chunin shared a good laugh at that. Naruto frowned, about to make a snide comment of his own when Kotatsu shook his head. Sorry, we were just thinking. That match you had with that Hyuga kid. Priceless. We were stationed below the Hyuga's private deck, and you should have seen the look on their faces when you won that match. Oh, thanks. Naruto gave them a smile of his own. It was nice to get some recognition for once. Yeah, that was a great one, Izumo agreed. The Chunin shared another glance and Kotatsu nodded, prompting Izumo to ask, so is it true? Is what true? Naruto asked. Come on, Izumo urged him. Naruto gave them a confused look. What? Word has it you fought alongside Uchiha Sasuke and Shikaku's kid against that Gaara kid. I've heard a lot of different stories, but word has it Sasuke beat him. Is that true? No. Naruto bit out the answer with an agitated frown. Then who did? Kotatsu asked. I did. The Chunin looked at each other again and burst out laughing. It ticked Naruto off, but he refused to let his temper get the best of him, not on the first day of being Chunin. He couldn't disappoint the old man so soon. What's so funny? He demanded instead. Kotatsu abruptly stopped laughing. You're serious, aren't you? No way, Izumo shook his head. Why the hell do you think I'm wearing this flak jacket? Naruto gestured to his uniform. Though they found his flak odd, they couldn't help but laugh embarrassedly. Sorry about that, Kotatsu apologized. It's not a big deal, Naruto lied. He was anxious to get going so he brushed past them. I'd love to talk some more but I've got to report for briefing and assignment. As the rookie Chunin walked away, Kotatsu and Izumo looked at each other with incredulous expressions. So he really did beat Sabaku no Gaara and Hyuga Neji. Kotatsu feigned a shudder, getting a laugh out of his partner. That kid is going places, Izumo. We need to watch out before he gets promoted to Jonin before we do. Izumo chuckled and waved him off. He's good, but he's not that good, is he? Ooh. 10 minutes later, Briefing Room 1. The briefing room was similar to the academy in terms of structure, though it was much larger and could probably hold up to twice as many people. In addition, instead of shelves of textbooks, there were many maps of Hai no Kuni and the entire continent as well as a bulletin board with sheets of paper stuck to them. Naruto sat behind a desk in the room full of shinobi, feeling as though he was back in academy and counted about 40 in the room. Looking around, he noticed most were Chunin, and the majority of them were around his age. He recognized quite a few of them from the academy when he was younger. As Naruto expected, Shikamaru was also present. He sat a few rows behind him, for once actually sitting up straight and not dozing off and diligently making notes as the rest of them were. Okay, looks like everyone is here, said a tall bulky bald shinobi standing behind a lectern in the front of the room. Alright then, men, today we are joined by two rookies. Nara Shikamaru and Uzumaki Naruto are the only ones to have passed the exams this year. Quite a few found his amusing and sniggered, prompting the bald shinobi to cough to keep their attention. As pitiful as that may sound, this year's competition was tough. That's not important though, the man continued. For the newbies, my name is Kizu Enro and I am the platoon leader of the Naiju Shotai. Enro was tall and muscular with a shaven head adorned with a deep scar running over his scalp and right eye. He was dressed in the regular uniform and wore a white piece of cloth with platoon leader stamped on it in red kanji attached under his flak jacket much like Asuma. Naruto got a few looks, few held contempt in their eyes but the majority of the shinobi were around his age and had thus never been told about the Kyuubi. If they had something against Naruto, it was either because he pulled a prank on them or because their parents told them slanderous things about him. Either way, he wouldn't let it get to him. Not this time around. I'll keep it brief for the two rookies, Kizu announced. The Naiju Shotai is the highest numbered platoon in Konoha's border patrol guard and consists out of Chunin, Tokubetsu Jonin and a handful fully fledged Jonin. The better your performance, the more likely you'll be put into lower digits for tougher missions. As the 20th platoon, we are assigned mostly with the grunt work of our central government's homeland security, so expect to be out and about on border patrol most of the time. Kizu looked at the notes placed on his lectern and nodded. First order of business, make sure to make notes. Teams 305 to 307, you already got your orders yesterday. Get going and good hunting. Naruto noted each squad had 5 members as 15 shinobi got up and left the room. Teams 308 to 310, you're cleared for border patrol for the next 3 weeks. Another 15 Chunin rose and left the briefing room, leaving 15 Chunin left not counting Kizu and his 2 assistants. Team 311, you just returned from your mission. You guys are cleared for some R&R. I'll see you in a few days. Another 5 rose out of their seat, leaving Naruto with Shikamaru and 3 others remaining. You guys, Enro addressed the remaining 5 shinobi in the room, you are now official the 312th team of the guard. Tsurugaku, you're the senior, so consider yourself promoted to team leader until further notice. Congratulations. Kizu nodded to a tall Chunin with spiky brown hair and dark eyes seated a row in front of Naruto and walked up to his desk, dropping 2 files on his desk. Here are their files. Team 312, you guys have a week to get familiar with one another before I set you on your first mission. Tsurugaku showed those newbies the ropes. I'm trusting you with this one. Tsurugaku stood up and nodded, accepting the 2 files Kizu passed him. Understood, sir. Naruto turned around with a smile to Shikamaru who shot him a lazy smile of his own. At the very least they knew someone in the squad that would make things considerably easier. Sarugaku turned to them and cleared his throat. Nara, Uzumaki, Hayase, Nakamura, follow me. Naruto rose out of his desk, sharing a glance with Shikamaru, who merely nodded and followed the rest of the team. 20 minutes later, Training Ground 22. On their way to the training ground, Naruto and Shikamaru were silent whilst the remaining three, who were already familiar with one another, spoke a few words. They arrived at the training ground and sat down under a tree as Sarugaku cleared his throat again. Alright, let's get started, the team leader announced, addressing Naruto and Shikamaru in particular. I am already familiar with Hayase and Nakamura, but since you two are new, I believe a team-building exercise is in order. I will begin. My name is Sarugaku Suzumi and I will be your team leader, TL for short. You may address me as Taicho during missions and Senpai during downtime. I am 22 years old, I enjoy good literature and strategic board games. I specialize in sabotage and setting up traps with my explosive ninjutsu. I have an affinity for fire. My ambition is to one day join the ranks of Anbu. You left out you're the oldest in our division, Hayase pointed out with a laugh. Then turning to the rookies, he added, Suzumi here hasn't gotten promoted once since he joined the division 4 years ago. Sarugaku cleared his throat with a not-so-subtle glare at Hayase. Yes, I am the most experienced member of the Naiju Shotai, and I have yet to be promoted due to the fact my experience is needed in our division. Before Hayase could retort, the Chunin then added, why don't you go next, Hayase? Hayase was a teenage Chunin with silky bluish-gray hair going down the right side of his face and gray eyes. He had tanned skin and flamboyant air about him. Fine. My name is Hayase, I am currently 17 years old and my hobbies include promiscuity and ninjutsu. I specialize in earth jutsu and sabotage just like Senpai over here, though I'm brushing up my kenjutsu. Hayase emphasized his point by resisting a hand one of his twin kodachi strapped over his shoulder. As for my ambitions, bang 100 chicks before I reach 30. At your rate, try 3,000, Nakamura commented with a tone of disgust Naruto could relate to. He wasn't sure whether he liked Hayase, the guy looked energetic and friendly, but he was somewhat of a tool. Nakamaru Rei was an attractive purple-haired kunoichi with pale skin and violet eyes. She was one of the few kunoichi that were present and wore a slit skirt with skin-tight shorts and stockings instead of shinobi trousers and carried a backpack rather than pouches. I'll go next. My name is Nakamura Rei, I am 14 years old and have been a Chunin for 7 months. My hobbies include art, cooking and gardening. My affinity is water. I specialize in medical ninjutsu and genjutsu. Naruto smiled, at least he's something in common with one of his new teammates. Sarugaku seemed to be very ambitious and loved authority. Hayase reminded him of Akiba if he loved women as much as dogs, but at the very least Rei seemed normal and she liked gardening, as did he. That, and she was very attractive, cuter than Sakura, so that was definitely a plus. Sarugaku cleared his throat again. Naruto was beginning to dislike that habit. Now then, Nara, Uzumaki, you two take turns. Please tell us about yourself so I can see if your files are up to date. Shikamaru looked at Naruto and then sighed. My name is Nara Shikamaru, I am 13 years old and my hobbies include shogi and cloud watching. As for my affinity, I don't know what it is. I specialize in my clan's shadow possession jutsu and tactics. My goal is to join Konoha's strategic department. Sarugaku took a look at Shikamaru's folder and nodded repeatedly. From what I understand you graduated second to last in your class, after Uzumaki Naruto here, who was the dead last of your year. The senior Chunin seemed rather disappointed to have been saddled with the 2 worst students of their year. How did you two pass? It was a rhetorical question they didn't answer, and he continued reading the file. Your sensei was Sarutobi Asuma, the Hokage's son. That explains your promotion at least. Sarugaku raised an eyebrow as he read out loud. Incredible. An IQ over 200. Noted to have incredible tactical and strategic mindset. Son of Nara Shikaku. Impressive, I can see Asuma did a great job teaching you. It was just as Asuma was mentioned when Shikamaru brushed his ear. Naruto noticed the shadow user's new earrings were most likely a parting gift. He hadn't got one from Kakashi, then again Kakashi probably didn't know he was promoted. Naruto made a note to seek his old team after they were done here. Brainy, huh, looks like this kid is smarter than you, senpai. Heiase grinned at Tsurugaku, who seemed rather perturbed by this. Alright, looks like I'm last. Naruto took a moment to formulate his thoughts. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, I'm also 13 years old and my hobbies include gardening and pulling pranks. I have an affinity for wind and I specialize in ninjutsu, and I'm also decent at taijutsu. I suppose my ninjutsu is somewhat lacking, but I'm working on it. My dream is to one day become Hokage and protect the village from its enemies. Ah yes, Hokage. There was a tone of condescension in Tsurugaku's voice as he sat down on a log post and placed Shikamaru's folder on the floor and picked up Naruto as Heiase took a glance at the shadow user's files. Okay, let's see. Tsurugaku frowned and turned the folder for everyone to see. You might want to submit a different picture for your file, Uzumaki. Naruto laughed at the picture of himself with white and red face paint and Heiase burst out laughing whilst Shikamaru and Rei merely cracked a smile. Yeah, I'll think about it. Don't think about it, do it. Consider that your first order. Tsurugaku frowned at him and continued to read out loud to share the information. Dead last of your year, multiple infractions of misconduct in academy, characteristics ranging from immature to impatient and impulsive. Tsurugaku looked at him with barely veiled contempt. Naruto was pretty much the anti-version of himself. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment as Rei and Heiase looked at him as though they already knew he was going to be a burden to his team. Shikamaru, on the other hand, smiled at Naruto, having known him since childhood and having recently acquired a lot more respect for the blonde. The shadow user knew full well Naruto was going to be anything but a burden to the team. How in the hell did you get assigned to A-ranked missions? At this, his new teammates shared confused looks. Tsurugaku began to read more and then made a sound of understanding. I see, your sensei was none other Hitaki Kakashi and you were on the same team as Uchiha Sasuke. That explains it. Naruto frowned at that. No, it doesn't. It came out sounding ruder than he thought and Tsurugaku didn't take kindly to it. Excuse me. Your file indicates you are insubordinate and immature, with little to no talent. How did you even get promoted? I heard you defeated Hyuga Neji, but I had my doubts. This just confirms it. Shikamaru turned to Naruto. He makes a good point. You weren't at the ceremony, how did you get promoted? I went to the old man and I. Naruto wasn't proud of saying it, demanded he promote me, sort of. Sort of. Heiase chuckled. Tsurugaku gave Naruto a cold look. I suggest you learn some respect and stop lying, Uzumaki. If you so much as raised your voice at Hokage-sama, you would have been thrown in detention, not promoted. You won't impress anyone with being a braggart and a liar. Let's just say we're close, Naruto replied vaguely. He doubted they would believe him if he told them exactly how close he was to the old man. And like I said, Uchiha Sasuke being on my team has nothing to do with the fact I got promoted. If it did, don't you think he would be here too? Or what, do you think he got promoted to Jonin before you? There a sting to that comment that struck a few chords with Tsurugaku, who flipped over a few pages. It says right here, Uchiha Sasuke defeated two Chunin known as the Demon Brothers from Kurigakure, defeated Momochi Zabuza's protege and assisted Hitaki Kakashi in defeating Momochi, who is one of the 7 swordsmen of Kurigakure, I might add. All in one A-ranked mission you just happened to be a part of. Heiase and Rei seemed genuinely surprised and Shikamaru gave Naruto a curious look. He hadn't heard much about Team 7's first A-ranked mission either. Tsurugaku continued with a glare aimed at Naruto. And then, there is records of him defeating Sabaku no Gaara, and saving Konoha and several allies, including you, in the process. That's not what happened, Naruto said through gritted teeth. Yes, Sasuke beat the Demon Brothers, but we both helped Kakashi-sensei beat Zabuza the first time around, the second time it was all Kakashi-sensei. As for Zabuza's protege, his name was Haku and he defeated both me and Sasuke before I managed to beat him with luck the second time around. And I'm sure you also beat Sabaku no Gaara, Tsurugaku inferred sarcastically, getting a chuckle out of Heiase and an impassive stare from Rei directed at Naruto. He did beat Sabaku no Gaara, Shikamaru interrupted, cutting of Naruto's retort. He did? Heiase asked with a somewhat dumbfounded expression. Rei looked at Naruto as though he was some fascinating creature. Him. Shikamaru sighed, annoyed he was getting involved in this. Yes, I was on the same A-ranked mission to assist Uchiha Sasuke. He was losing the fight until Naruto ended up saving him. Who do you think summoned that huge toad? Gamabunta-sama was summoned by Jiraiya-sama, he is the only one alive with the toad summoning contract. Maybe you didn't notice, but Jiraiya-sama was summoning his toads right in the village when Orochimaru attacked. Sarugaku pointed out heatedly. There is no way this loser did anything that great. Naruto got to his feet aggressively, he had just about enough. What is your problem? Naruto let it go, Shikamaru interrupted him again. Being one of the few that Naruto could genuinely call a friend, he understood why Naruto was so angry. After all, Sasuke had been beating him in everything since academy days. He realized how the blonde had to feel frustrated to say the least, to have his one win, his promotion, be associated with Sasuke. Still, this was their first day as Chunin and Naruto couldn't just go and piss off their team leader. It's obvious they won't believe you. Just prove to them how strong you are when the opportunity arises. Naruto glared at the shadow user but couldn't help but agree and thus settled down. Fine, think what you want, Sarugaku-senpai. I'll make you eat those words someday. Sarugaku ignored that remark as he got his feet and clapped his hands together. Now then, let's familiar with team formations and tactics. These two need to get familiar with our teamwork. Hayase groaned, great. 2 hours later. Okay, that's it for today, team. Tomorrow, we'll put the theory to practice. Dismissed. Naruto got up from the ground and put back on his flak jacket, having discarded it when it got too hot. They had been going over nothing but tactics at a snail's pace, it was as if Sarugaku thought they were completely stupid. Naruto decided by the end, he didn't like Sarugaku in the slightest. Never mind the fact he thought all of his accomplishments were Sasuke's, the guy was just generally just an ass to Naruto. Hayase was alright, Naruto didn't mind his attitude in the slightest. Ray didn't seem to think much of him, but he was fine with it considering most people were like that towards him initially and it only encouraged him to prove them wrong. It went without saying he was closest to Shikamaru on the team. They would probably grow closer now that they were on the same team. They got along nicely when they were kids but were pretty much strangers by the time they left academy for various reasons. I'll see you tomorrow, Shika. I've got to go to Kakashi-sensei and say goodbye to my old team. Shikamaru merely nodded. Sure, but would you mind telling me why your flak is different from mine before you go? It looks heavier. This is Gigi's old flak jacket from when he was a Chunin like a century ago. He also gave me his old tanto. Naruto indicated blade attached to the flak jacket by a belt. Cool, huh? Shikamaru smiled lazily. I'll never understand why Hokage-sama likes you so much. It's because I'm the one who's going to let him retire. See ya, Shika. With that, Naruto took off, running towards Team Kakashi's usual training ground. Naruto arrived at training ground 7 minutes later and saw Kakashi reading his book whilst instructing Sasuke, who was fighting his clone, as Sakura cheered on her teammate. It was as if nothing had changed, the only difference would have been Naruto cheering for Kakashi's clone instead of Sasuke, which would usually get him a pummeling from Sakura. The thought brought a genuine smile to his face. Kakashi looked up from his book as Naruto held up his hand in greeting. The Jonin smiled lazily behind his mask and his clone caught Sasuke's fist, causing him and Sakura to notice Naruto had arrived. The Scarecrow had to admit, Naruto looked a lot more like the Yondaime than usual in his standard Konoha uniform. The knucklehead ninja appeared more confident and somewhat more mature, maybe even a little taller. Naruto. Sakura looked at Sasuke as though to confirm it was really her teammate. Why are you wearing that uniform? You got promoted, didn't you? Naruto came to a stop in front of his team and smiled proudly. I got promoted yesterday. Sorry I didn't tell you, it was sort of last minute, Sakura-chan. The Rosette shared glances with Sasuke and looked like she was about to try dispelling a genjutsu. I'm serious. I really got promoted, Gigi himself promoted me yesterday. Sakura gave her sensei a wide-eyed look. Is it true, Kakashi-sensei? Did Naruto really get promoted? Kakashi nodded. Before me and Sasuke. Naruto frowned. What's that supposed to mean, Sakura-chan? Gigi told me I earned this promotion and he even gave me his old flak jacket. Naruto emphasized his point by indicating his uniform. I'm sorry, Naruto, that sounded really mean. I'm just surprised you're the only one that got promoted, I mean not even Sasuke or Neji got promoted. Naruto was about to retort he actually beat his opponent, but let it go. He still had feelings for Sakura and he didn't want to upset her, nor did he want to ruin this moment. Sasuke looked at Naruto with an arrogant smile, the very same he had when he told Naruto he wanted to fight him the most during the finals. Congratulations, you earned it. Naruto was taken back. Did that just happen? Sasuke never congratulated him on anything before. Thanks, Naruto grinned at the raven-haired genin. Naruto thought back to a few weeks after they graduated and the Uchiha had saved him again during one of their missions. If you don't want to owe me, surpass me. Those were the words Sasuke had said to him. It was the first time Sasuke acknowledged him as a potential rival. That seemed to do it for Sakura, who nodded and kindly smiled at him. Congratulations, Naruto. Kakashi put away his book and took a thoughtful pose. I suppose tradition dictates I give you a present, but what could I give you? The Chidori, Naruto thought immediately. You don't need to give me anything, Kakashi-sensei. I'm just glad I got promoted, though it looks like I'm going to have a tough time getting my teammates to like me. Kakashi gave Naruto a curious look and Naruto subtly shook his head, indicating it wasn't because of his status as a Jinchuriki. Let me guess, your teammates are people you have pulled a prank on. Naruto laughed. No, that's not it. It's actually kind of funny. For the next few minutes, Naruto told them all about his teammates and how he got promoted. He had the sense to tone down on Sarugaku's attitude towards him to not alarm his team. Shikamaru got promoted too. Sakura's tone was disbelieving and it was getting annoying, but Naruto let it go. The two lowest scoring genin in our class got promoted to Chunin. That's kind of ironic, isn't it? Well, Shikamaru just never tried, Sakura-chan. He's really smart but he's just as lazy, so he doesn't seem dangerous. Though, that's the scary part. Naruto came to the shadow user's defense, they were now teammates after all. As for me, Naruto grinned, if I knew how to use a Kage Bunshin, I would have passed the first time around. Kakashi chuckled at that. So this Sarugaku doesn't like you very much. No, he doesn't, Naruto laughed nervously as Sasuke and Sakura gave him disapproving looks. It's really not my fault. It isn't, he added forcibly when they kept looking at him like that. He thinks everything I've done, Sasuke did. Sasuke glared at no one in particular and they wisely choose not to comment on that. For the rest of the afternoon, Naruto stayed with his old team. It got nostalgic, even Sasuke seemed bothered by the fact he was leaving, though hell would freeze over twice before he would admit it. Kakashi looked up as Hawk flew by. It looks like we're being summoned for a mission, Naruto. It's been nice seeing you again, make sure to drop by every now and then. Somebody needs to keep Sasuke on his guard. Sasuke got to his feet and grabbed his backpack and nodded to him while Sakura bid Naruto goodbye. For a moment Naruto looked at his old team as they left, a wave of nostalgia crashing over him as he could hardly believe this was really happening. In the few months they had been together, Naruto felt he had really bonded with them, and to see them leave made his heart feel heavy. Naruto cupped his hands to his mouth. Sasuke. In the distance, the Uchiha turned around with a questioning look. What is it? Naruto smiled. I'll see you at the top. For a moment Sasuke was expressionless. Then, a smile crept to his features as he locked eyes with Naruto and began to smile slowly. I'll see you there. Naruto clenched his fists as his old teammates disappeared out sight, feeling a mix of emotions ranging from anxiousness to excitement. He stood there for a few minutes, unmoving and deep in thought as he dealt with the nostalgia that came to surface. Naruto smiled. Just because he outranked them now didn't mean they would stop getting stronger. He had to continue getting stronger, both for himself and for his old team. Naruto reached to the small of his back and reached into his pouch, retrieving the scroll containing jutsu. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Author's notes. I could never understand Kishimoto's logic in keeping Naruto a genin. For the sake of the plot, I can understand he wanted to keep Team 7 together until the Sasuke retrieval arc, but really, couldn't he come up with another way of doing it? Naruto won his match against Hyuga Neji and continued to defy all odds by beating Gaara, who stomped the shit out of Sasuke. Then there's the fact he signed the Toad summoning contract, meaning he was acknowledged by the ever-so-fickle Gamabunta and Jiraiya of the Sannin. Surely his skill set alone would clear him for promotion. Anyhow, this is my attempt at a Naruto who isn't a complete idiot and who realizes he needs to step up his game if he ever wants that hat. For those who are wondering, Naruto's flak jacket is modified to look like the Naruto from Jiraiya's The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. He will retain this look for the majority of the story, so I recommend you go to Naruto Wikipedia and take a look at his picture if you have trouble imagining it. In regards to Naruto's power, he'll be powerful, but it doesn't happen overnight, not even with the Kage Bunshin training method. Okay, that's all I got. Notes. 1. Naruto's actual ninja registration number is revealed in the data books. 2. I know the Naiju Shotai was a task force created for the sole purpose of locating and destroying Akatsuki forces, but that's not how it goes in this story. You'll see how I play with Konoha military structure in future chapters. Ch2. Hit the ground running. 1 week later, Hokage Tower. Knock, knock, enter. Naruto pushed through the double doors, a greeting smile on his face as he entered spacious office of the Hokage. The old man was seated, eyes glancing over a file in his hand which he placed on his desk and stamped with his seal. Gigi. Hiruzen's eyes rested on Naruto's somewhat disheveled form, noticing a few smudges of dirt and mud here and there. When I said I wanted to see you after your mission, I didn't mean straightaway, Naruto-kun. I know, Gigi, but I don't mind. Naruto drew a chair, oblivious to the Hokage's mindful eye of his luxurious furniture under a dirty pair of trousers. So, what did you want to see me about? The Hokage leaned back into his chair and curled his fingers. How was your first mission as a Chunin? Not too much trouble, I suspect. Naruto shook his head. It was pretty boring, but being in the countryside was kind of refreshing. I see, well, with time and experience you may very well be issued with tougher missions to complete, the Hokage told him. But for the time being, you are yet a rookie, Naruto-kun. You'll have to deal with whatever mission you're set with. Naruto nodded. I understand, Gigi. Good, the old man nodded approvingly. For a moment it seemed that was all the old man wanted, thus Naruto rose out of his chair with a nod, however Hiruzen held up a hand. One moment, Naruto. I must regrettably inform you, your promotion has come at an unfortunate time. Naruto was confused but asked no question, thus Hiruzen continued. Due to recent events you're going to have a lot on your plate. Missions will be coming in non-stop for the time being and there's a good chance even your downtime will be spent running errands. I suggest you take the time to rest properly whenever you can. Even as a rookie you will be expected to hit the ground running, Naruto-kun. Why's that, Gigi? Well, the Hokage leaned back into his chair for a moment. Konoha needs to prove that the invasion has done nothing to impede our efforts in maintaining our place amongst the great 5 shinobi villages. Therefore it is imperative we appear 100% operational at all times. So we're basically flexing our muscles to keep the other villages on their toes. Naruto inferred. You catch on quick, Hiruzen said with a smile. Naruto scratched his cheek. Hey, must be Shika's influence on me. Don't sell yourself short, Naruto-kun. You may not have an IQ exceeding 200 but when it comes down to it, you are a fighting genius. Hiruzen's tone was surprisingly firm. Naruto nodded with a stronger sense of confidence. On the way here I noticed a lot of civilian work crews. Does that mean the daimyos coughed up funds for repairing the damage from the invasion? Indeed, Hiruzen nodded. I won't bore you with the details, but as you may already know it can be quite cumbersome to secure additional funds from our daimyo. Fortunately, the Shodai drafted several clauses when Konoha was formed. Amongst those clauses, there are quite a few we can invoke in instances such as these. Aha, I see. Naruto turned to see the Hokage's aide walk in with a stack of paperwork. The old man's expression instantly fell. Well, I'll leave you to it, Gigi. I'll swing by soon. I already look forward to it, the old man grumbled as his eyes laid on the pile of paperwork, as though willing it to spontaneously burst into flames. 3 weeks later, Hi-no-Kuni countryside. In the woodlands in Fire Country's countryside, Naruto stumbled tiredly to the source of water in the distance. Moments later, the blonde knelt down by a stream, sinking his tanto in the soil as he eyed the water closely. He reached into his pouch and withdrew a small canister of light blue pills and dropped 3 into the stream. The immediately following fizzy noise was as a result of a chemical reaction the pills set off to clear the water of toxins and other impurities. These pills were usually used by shinobi in foreign countries, but one could never be too certain. It was one of the many things he picked up over the last few weeks. Most seemed rather mundane, but in reality were rather sensible. For instance, the Tonto stabbed in the ground would, if left there, would tip off his teammates something had happened, such as a surprise attack for instance. Naruto waited for the water to clear up some more and then submerged his hands into the stream, filling them with water and splashed some on his face to rub the dirt off the dirt and fatigue. He allowed himself a minute to idly stare into his reflection, then reached for his canteen to fill it up with water as his mind wandered. Another scouting mission. Team 312 had been deployed on mission after mission for the past 2 weeks. It was almost as if their platoon leader, or PL for short, was making them catch up for the week off he had given them to familiarize themselves with team procedures. Naruto hadn't seen his old team in weeks, or any of his other peers for that matter. It was just like the old man had told him it would be. The Hidden Leaf had to be wary of others' villages that would jump at the chance to take them down and usurp their place amongst the Great Five. The scouting missions they were sent on were more often than not uneventful and boring, but Naruto knew it was simply flexing the muscles on Konoha's part. By appearing to be fully operational and vigilant at the same time, the other villages would watch their step. Unfortunately, increased shinobi appearance throughout Hai no Kuni required more manpower, and with the significant loss of shinobi in the last invasion, this meant all shinobi of Chunin rank and higher would be working almost non-stop. This particular scouting mission was a bitch to handle though. In 72 hours they had to cover 80 miles to their sign-off point and another 80 back to Konoha. 1. A rustling noise in the background alerted him, causing Naruto to instantly thrust a kunai from his sleeve. It was a nice piece of mechanism Hayase showed him to create with a bit of ninja wire and a spring set. Relax, it's just me. Shikamaru knelt down next to Naruto and took the blonde's canteen out of his hand without asking, and took a swing. Sure, Shika, no problem. Have a drink, what's mine is yours. Naruto's deadpan expression did not reflect his words. Swiping back his canteen and fixing it to his utility belt, Naruto stood up as the shadow user cleansed his face from dirt and fatigue. I thought, take 5, meant, take a 5-minute break. What, did Tsurugaku forget how to tell time? You should make more of an effort to get along, Shikamaru told him, also getting to his feet after refilling his own canteen. Anyway, from the looks of it we'll be going home early. I doubt it, Naruto shook his head with a wry smile at the thought that was too good to be true. If Tsurugaku so much as arrives a second early, he'll get all agitated. The guy doesn't want to appear to not be doing his job, you know that as well as I do, Shikamaru. Shikamaru shook his head. I bet you 1,000 ryo I'm right. 2. You never gamble. Naruto's eyes narrowed suspiciously. You're trying to take me for a fool, aren't you? You shifty bastard. Wouldn't take much effort, Shikamaru commented under his breath. What? Nothing. Let's just say we found something interesting that'll be enough incentive for Tsurugaku to let us wrap up this mission up early. Naruto swung his backpack over his shoulders. Well then, let's go and see. Moments later, Naruto's stomach churned at the sight of 3 decapitated corpses that appeared to have just been unearthed. Tsurugaku was unperturbed, having probably encountered situations like these before. He knelt down by the decomposing bodies as he swiped away some flies. Aren't they just lovely? Hayase sighed dreamily. I was just minding my own business, you know, taking a leak, and on my way back I stumbled over some uneven earth, and just like that I saw a toe sticking out. How Hayase found this funny, Naruto didn't know, but he was afraid to ask. Whoever tried to ditch these bodies obviously didn't do that good of a job. I mean, they were barely a foot deep. The bodies appear to have been here for a few days, Rei droned in what Naruto assumed was her doctor voice, as she took out a notebook and a camera and slipped on some latex gloves. All 3 subjects indicate their decapitation was post-mortem. Their skins bear many scars, some of which have already faded. Whatever business they were in, it was rough. Rough business, huh? Tsurugaku reached for Rei's backpack and retrieved a pair of latex gloves, slipping them on and peeling away the kimono one of the corpses was wearing. Just as I thought, these guys were members of a yakuza. Naruto raised an eyebrow and knelt next to his senior, pinching the bridge of his nose as he did so. What makes you think that? See these marks? Tsurugaku tapped a finger on the man's neck. Under the grimy dirt, Naruto could vaguely read the kanji for Kurota Gumi. Aha, Looks like they got what was coming to them. Naruto didn't feel sympathy for the deceased, they probably weren't the best of folks anyway. Standard procedure is to document this and send a copy to the nearest settlements, right? Right, Ray confirmed. I will begin with documenting, I'll make a copy for the nearest. That won't be necessary, Nakamura, Sarugaku decided. The nearest settlement is Tanzaku-gai, a city well known for its casinos, red light districts and their yakuza organizations. Something tells me these three weren't just some lowlife thugs. What gave that away? The 3 dead bodies buried miles outside the city outskirts. Hayase interjected sarcastically. They're too well dressed, Sarugaku finished, and he made a good point. Though they were covered in dirt, these men were buried in some expensive-looking clothing. They couldn't have been the regular, dime-a-dozen kind of thugs. The marks around hands and fingers indicated they were also stripped from their jewelry by whoever buried them out here. We're going to document this, but we're not sending a copy to Tanzaku-gai's police department. We're going to report back to RPL and he'll decide what we'll do next. Naruto eyed Shikamaru for a response. The lazy genius merely shrugged indifferently, so Naruto tried anyway. Standard procedure. Standard procedure is to follow the chain of command. Uzumaki, Sarugaku cut him off. As TL, this is my call to make and I'm making it. Nakamura, I'll be waiting for your report back at camp. Hayase, help me pack up, you two rookies stay with Nakamura. Sarugaku left no room for argument and left quickly after giving instructions, with Hayase right behind him. Naruto glared at the retreating form of Sarugaku. That guy has issues. Ray shrugged as she dutifully took notes. Uzumaki, let it be. He's the TL, he gets to call the shots, not you. I didn't say. Let it go, Naruto. Shikamaru fell in to avoid another argument. We're the rookies here, let them decide how and what. It's his ass on the line anyway. Fine. That doesn't mean I have to like it, though. Naruto leaned against tree and took watch as Ray began to take pictures with her camera and made notes. 3 weeks in and he still hadn't made much progress in getting along with his teammates. It went without saying, he and Shikamaru got along fine as they used to be rather good friends as kids, but the other three were different. Ray was unusually cold and shot him down whenever he tried to talk to her. Hayase was so much like Jiraiya, there were very few conversations they had that wasn't strictly about girls, which made the guy an obnoxious tool, and Sarugaku, well, he was a lost cause from the get-go. Naruto could only hope he would earn his promotion early and get the hell out of the border patrol guard, as it was neither interesting nor challenging as he had hoped. The next day, Naruto woke up in his apartment a little later than usual, having arrived home only a few hours into the early morning. The journey back to Konoha was uneventful and boring, much like the majority of scouting missions they were assigned to. As per usual, Naruto headed to Ichiraku's for a few bowls before heading back to his apartment, tired and smelly. Perhaps he shouldn't have stayed up a little longer to learn the principles behind water-based ninjutsu. Fatigued, Naruto stumbled into his kitchen, setting on some coffee and went into the bathroom to get freshen up. It struck him with a sense of relief today his team would get switched off scout rotation for a couple of days. Even with his immense stamina, scouting mission took it out of him mentally as much as physically. Naruto ate his fill. As he ate, he took out a scroll on water-based ninjutsu and continued to read up on an offensive water-type ninjutsu that could prove useful against multiple opponents. The principle was somewhat familiar to a few wind-based ninjutsu he had gotten down in past weeks, so it wouldn't take too long to get it down. He kept a mindful eye on the clock in his kitchen. I'd better get going if I don't want Sarugaku to bitch at me all day again. Naruto rushed out of his apartment and took to the rooftops as he headed towards the Hokage Tower for today's briefing. Today Team 312 would be put off scouting rotation. Usually each team went on deployment for 3 weeks, and then got downtime for another week before being put back on the scouting roster. Though his team had only been on 2 weeks' worth of scouting missions, they were still on the roster scheduled for downtime, which had also been cut down to 4 days, rather a full week, to compensate for Konoha's efforts in maintaining 100% functionality. You're actually on time for once, Shikamaru noted a few minutes later. Morning to you too, Naruto responded dryly. Where are the others? Naruto looked around. They were standing outside the Hokage Tower and it seemed none of his teammates were around. Inside, Shikamaru nodded. I told them I'd wait out here for you. I was late once, Shikamaru. Once, Naruto shook his head as he brushed past Shikamaru and walked into the huge cylinder-shaped tower in which the Hokage resided. We're scheduled for downtime today, right? Shikamaru shrugged. I don't know. What do you know? A whole lot more than you, that's for sure. Shikamaru put very little effort in his comebacks, yet they still always managed to bother Naruto, who in this instance opted to flip off his perpetually lazy teammate as they walked side by side. Still, Naruto had to hand it to Shikamaru. The lazy genius was knowledgeable on a lot of things, having grown up with a well-known shinobi strategist father and a mother who was a qualified chunin, not to mention hailing from one Konoha's most prominent shinobi clans. Much of this knowledge on the shinobi world, Shikamaru had shared with Naruto. Prior to his promotion, Naruto had the simplistic understanding that one could become a Kage simply by traversing the ranks between Genin to Jonin and eventually be appointed by the current Hokage. How wrong he had been. Shikamaru explained to him that such a system simply wouldn't work with a powerful shinobi village as Konoha, which had thousands of shinobi within its ranks. His ignorance wasn't necessarily his fault though, not if you considered the fact military structure wasn't even covered in the academy, and if it was, he probably slept through or missed those lessons, nor did Kakashi take the time to explain it to his team like Asuma had done for Shikamaru, Ino and Choji. With Nara's assistance and a handbook from Rei, Naruto came to understand Konoha's military force was divided into various departments, organizations, divisions and so on. To name a few, Konoha had its Border Patrol Guard, the Intelligence Department, Interrogation and Torture Force and Cryptanalysis Division, each dedicated to covering Konoha on certain field they specialized in. To realize his dream, Naruto would have not only have to simply be promoted to Jonin, he would have to be promoted to more prominent organizations within Konoha's shinobi ranks in order to gain support from his peers and to become a well-rounded shinobi knowledgeable of all shinobi playing fields. In short, a viable candidate for the seat of Hokage, a position upon which the daimyo, his delegates and Konoha's elite convened on. What Naruto found particularly interesting was that each sect within Konoha's military structure had its own traditions and codes of conduct. For example, the elitists from Intelligence Department always wore gray military-esque uniforms with face masks or bandages covered around their faces and were of very few choice words. The intimidating and questionably sane members of Torture and Interrogation Force wore the same sort of military suits under black trench coats and bandanas, often to hide their own hideous scars. Members of the Marine Division, Naruto had no idea Konoha even had a Marine Division, always wore blue garb over their wetsuits and had water apparatuses on their waists at all times. Naruto along with Shikamaru had been signed to the Naiju Shotai, the 20th platoon of Konoha's Border Patrol Guard, a department dedicated to tracking and reporting foreign influence and in some cases domestic influence throughout Hai no Kuni. Their assigned missions mostly consisted out of border patrol, scouting, and long-duration missions at stations, checking up on traps set by the other platoons and investigating matters of interests, which could range from fluctuations in crime to highway robbery. Naruto learned the lower the number of your platoon, the more seasoned your colleagues were and the tougher your missions would be. Each platoon had a minimum of 40 members and was divided in teams of 5s, often named after the team leader for convenience. Rei had saved them a seat next to her in the briefing room. I see you have finally taken the time to join us, Uzumaki. I was late once, Rei. When are you guys gonna let that go? Naruto took a seat next to Rei, a rather stoic medical kunoichi on his team whose demeanor was colder than anyone else he knew. I'm sorry I cost us that one lousy, stinking mission too. Pipe down, Uzumaki, Sarugaku ordered from the far left seat on their row. The PL is here. Naruto looked at Shikamaru with an irritable expression. The shadow user merely shrugged and slumped in his chair as their platoon leader took his position behind the lectern and the briefing started. All right boys and girls, who's missing? Their platoon leader Kizu Enro took a head count before he continued. Today's rotation schedule. Teams 308 to 312, you guys got some downtime for the next week. Yes, I said a full week and yes, there's a catch. You guys will have to run some errands for the Armory Administration due to lack of manpower. Almost immediately several shinobi gave shouts of indignation, but their burly platoon leader wasn't having any of it. Pipe down, Enro ordered loudly. TLs of teams 308 to 312, I have your mandates here, come and collect them after briefing. Yes, sir. Sarugaku was the only team leader that actually replied. Now then, Enro continued, there have been several reports of nuke in the borderlands roughly 50 miles south of Konoha's Armory Administration building. A while later Team 312 stood together in the Armory Administration's warehouse facilities below ground level. Lack of manpower was a bit of an understatement as the facility was practically abandoned. Sarugaku walked past each of them and handed out clipboards filled with orders on equipment and materials that needed to be delivered and collected. All right, we'll get the job done much quicker if we just delegate the workload, Sarugaku told them as he handed each of them a clipboard with information on them. Ray, since it's your expertise, you'll be handling the medical supplies. Understood. With that, Ray took off into another direction. Hey Ace, you and I will be handling these prototype demolition kits. From what they're telling me, only Anbu operatives can get their hands on these babies, so we'll take care of that. Naruto frowned, looking down on the orders on his clipboard that were identical to Shikamaru's. Why do we have to deliver all this boring stuff while you get the cool prototypes? Naruto gestured to the hundreds of stacked boxes in the warehouse facility with his clipboard to illustrate his point. These orders need to go all over the place, it'll take us forever just to find them. Seniority, Uzumaki, Sarugaku responded coolly. Seniority my. When he's right, he's right. Hayase added with a slap to Naruto's shoulder as the oldest members of Team 312 took off. Great, Naruto swore under his breath. Let's get this over with, I want to get in some training today. Naruto set the clipboard down on one box and then stacked the box on another too. Come on, Shika. Shikamaru stared at him with a dry expression. Naruto, do you ever use your clones for anything other rushing your opponents? Right, Naruto's sweat dropped, feeling incredibly stupid for not having thought of that himself. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Pillars of smoke burst out around them as 12 Naruto clones appeared and took off with their own clipboards, exploring the giant warehouse facility. Incredible. That's the Kage Bunshin Jutsu, isn't it? Naruto turned to the source of the voice and found a young girl their age standing by corner. My name is Shiho, she introduced herself as she approached them with an outstretched hand and a clipboard in another, held over a small square parcel. I work downstairs. Shiho was a tall and slender girl their age with light blonde hair and pale skin. She wore a lab coat over her regular clothes and a pair of glasses. Downstairs, Shikamaru repeated. Shiho immediately clapped her hands over her mouth and accidentally poked herself in the eye with her clipboard, though the damage was decreased due to her wearing glasses. Ouch, I'm not supposed to tell anyone of the secret floor below this one, so please keep it quiet. She's an oddball, isn't she? Naruto whispered to Shikamaru rather audibly, pointlessly using the clipboard to hide what he was doing. Don't be rude, Naruto, Shikamaru chided. Rest assured your secret is safe with us, Shikamaru nodded to Shiho. May I know your names? Shiho inquired with a soft tone, indicating how shy and socially awkward she was. Uzumaki Naruto, Naruto replied with his usual flamboyant bravado. Nara Shikamaru. You two are both Chunin? Shiho asked, to which the pair nodded. Oh, wow. That's rather unusual, you two look like you could be my age. How old are you? 13, I'm turning 14 in 5 months. Instantly Shikamaru's eyes narrowed as he snapped out of his perpetually lazy demeanor. You're younger than both of us, yet you're working for the Armory Administration in a secret level below this one. You must be quite the kunoichi. I assume you're a Chunin, too. I am indeed, Shiho confirmed. I graduated the academy over 4 years ago though. Whoa, you must be some super genius like Shikamaru, huh? Naruto was genuinely impressed. He has an IQ of over 200 or something like that, Naruto hurriedly elaborated, not even interested in the slightest with Shikamaru's genius. I bet you're a lot smarter than this lazy ass, huh? Well, I have IQ of 213, Shiho blushed a brilliant shade of red at the compliment. 3. What about you, Shika? Naruto prodded his companion. Mine is 208, Shikamaru said the digits with an unusual serious expression. Granted, there weren't many out there with the intellect that could rival his own genius, and to meet a shy, withdrawn girl like Shiho who not only rivaled him but whose IQ surpassed his must have been somewhat surprising, if not shocking. Naruto burst out laughing, punching Shikamaru in the arm. Ha! I knew you weren't smartest kid our age, suck it Shika. There go your bragging rights. Shiho stifled a laugh with some difficulty. Well I'm sure wait, did you just say you were of the Nara clan? Shikamaru nodded and Shiho instantly made a swoon-like noise. You must be related Nara Shikaku. A bit of a late reaction, Naruto noted with a sweat drop. He's my father. I knew it. You look just like him. Shiho exclaimed. I met your father once, it was a few months ago. He mentioned he had a son my age graduating soon, that was you. Naruto couldn't quite grasp why this exciting news and by the looks of it neither could Shikamaru. What was Shika's dad doing down here, Shiho-chan? Shiho-chan, oh my how familiar, Shiho said it more to herself to anyone else, hence it went unnoticed by Naruto. I'm afraid I can't tell you Uzumaki-san. Everything that goes down below is an A- ranked secret and I'll be in enough of trouble if anyone finds out of what I've already let slip. Come on. Naruto goaded her with an infectious grin. We're comrades aren't we? You can trust us, this is Shikuru's son, remember. Shikaku, Shikamaru corrected him with visible annoyance. Right, it's just that I prefer Shikuru. Shikaku reminds me of Shukaku and he's one mean son of A. I get it. Right, Naruto said again. Shiho giggled, from the sound of it and her expression it wasn't something she did often. You two are quite the pair, I suppose I can show you what's below, I hope Giken-sensei won't mind. We don't get much company. Naruto looked to Shikamaru and nodded. They followed Shiho as she led the way down past the stairs cases and elevators to an secluded area of the warehouse. Shiho looked around. Finding no one close she turned back to the wall and formed a ram hand seal to channel her chakra before she placed her palm against the concrete. Immediately hairline cracks shone a vibrant blue and the wall gave away as Shiho passed through it, followed shortly by the pair of Chunin behind her as they shared brief looks of suspicion. Minutes later they stopped before huge double doors wrought from thick gray steel. It was somewhat grimy and looked as if it hadn't been attended to a while. Next to it was a computer console where one would have to input the password to gain entry. Please don't wander around inside, it can be very dangerous, Shiho turned around as she said. The seriousness that tried to convey was somewhat stinted by the odd pair of glasses she wore. Do you understand? I'm not supposed to be showing around anyone who isn't authorized. Naruto and Shikamaru exchanged glances again. Sure. Shiho turned back to the gray blast doors and the computer console. Would you look away, please? A quick glance over her shoulder put her concerns to rest as Naruto and Shikamaru covered their eyes. One can never be too certain with shinobi, no offense. None taken. Naruto thumbed towards Shikamaru. What he said. A series of beeping tones sounded as Shiho punched in the code on the console, followed by the audible groaning of metal as the doors parted and blinding light broke through the cracks in the dark cavern-like part of Armory Administration Building. Welcome to Floor Zero, the real Floor Zero, Shiho smiled at her new companions. Follow me. And follow they did, as Shiho walked through the door in a large spacious area filled with many desks and high-tech equipment scattered around on benches and pinned against walls. Only 2 of us work down here, Shiho explained. When I was 8, I noticed my sensei snuck a hidden IQ test in my homework. You've had this special piece of homework too, right? Shikamaru nodded. Everyone did, actually. I was the only one to figure out it was an IQ test though. So was I, Shiho beamed. I noticed the test was odd and somewhat illogical, so I went to my sensei and she revealed to me I was the only one that noticed it was an IQ test. They diagnosed mine to be 213 and offered me the chance to graduate early. Why'd you take it? Didn't you miss your friends at all? Naruto asked. Shiho gave an awkward shrug. I didn't have any friends. Nor was I talented in any form of shinobi combat. The only reason I enrolled was because my parents wanted me to, so I took it and became a scientist for Konoha. I was never much of a fighter to begin with. What is it you do down here? Naruto stopped by a workbench to pick up what seemed to be an ordinary singular piece of makebishi. You guys handle the equip. Don't touch that. Shiho slapped away his hand and sighed, checking up on the lone piece of makebishi with a careful eye. These aren't regular caltrops, they're explosives. They serve as landmines on the battlefield, rather than just hinder the enemy. Sounds great. Naruto's eye wandered to a lone wakizashi. What does that do? It carries a launching mechanism for a new type of ninja wire, can we please keep moving? Giken-sensei will get really upset if he catches us messing with his work, Shiho warned. Come, I'll show you where I work. I don't have as much expertise as Giken-sensei, so I'm usually left to test out the smaller stuff like this. Shiho held up the small parcel she'd been carrying. So this Giken-sensei has created all of this. Naruto let out a lengthy whistle. That's impressive. Oh, no, we don't invent all of these. We just test them and write up reports which determine whether they'll be used in combat or not. Shiho stopped by the far end of the spacious room and stooped by her desk. This is where I work. Today I'll be writing up a report on this device. Shiho placed the parcel on her desk and pulled up her chair. Naruto eyed the parcel as Shiho unwrapped it carefully. What's this do? It's a chakra sensor, Shiho replied. With a simple point and click, this little thing will gauge the chakra emitted from any person, weapon or even seal. They can be quite useful when looking for booby traps out in the battlefield. How do you know it works? You ask a lot of questions, Uzumaki-san. Sorry. No, don't apologize, Shiho smiled again. I actually quite enjoy the attention, it's nice. The oddball genius held up the small metallic device in front Naruto and showed him the display screen. All these small stripes work like a graph. The lower the chakra emitted, the more this arrow, she tapped the screen for emphasis, will lean on the left. For example, do you have an exploding tag on you? Yeah, sure. Naruto dove into his pouch attached to the small of his back by a utility belt and withdrew a single exploding tag. Here. Shiho placed the tag on an unusual-looking slab of material on her desk and then pointed the chakra sensor device's antenna to the tag. Now we press this button and, there we have it. She held up the display again for the two to see. Pretty impressive, huh? It is, Shikamaru nodded. You said it could gauge person's chakra too, right? The shadow user raised an eyebrow at his blonde-haired teammate, which went unnoticed. Could you please? Of course. Shiho was eager to please and raised the device to Shikamaru. Let's see what you got. Actually, I meant, it appears your chakra reservoir is average, Shiho declared. Shikamaru sighed. Thank you. Now let's try you, Uzumaki-san, Shiho said with an exciting tone. You seem energetic, I'm sure you'll do great. Naruto held up his hand and shook his head. No, I'd rather not. Too late now, Naruto. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed at the device in Shiho's hand. Incredible, Shiho exclaimed. At first glance it jumped to extremely high levels and it's not stopping. The device screeched and its lights began to blink erratically for a moment before it failed altogether and the device imploded, prompting Shiho to drop it on her desk. Unbelievable. Naruto rubbed the back of his head nervously, the damage already done. Well, you knew I could do the Kage Bunshin, so why did you even bother checking? I'm too curious for my own good. Shiho appeared as if was about to burst in tears. Giken-sensei is going to be so upset. Who's going to be upset? A new voice demanded. The voice belonged to an elderly man with gray beard, unhealthily looking gray skin with oversized goggles, wearing a white lab coat over his brown tunic. Shiho, who are these two? Giken-sensei. What are you doing, Shiho? Giken demanded as he approached them in hobbling fashion, raising his cane to the pair of Chunin. Chunin, as Tokubetsu Jonin I outrank you. State your names and registration codes. Uzumaki Naruto, registration code 012607. Nara Shikamaru, registration code 012611. 4. Giken hobbled closer and poked Naruto in the chest with a suspicious glance at Shikamaru. You are related to Nara Shikaku, his son if I'm not mistaken. Shikamaru nodded to this. I requested to pull you out of academy around the same time as Shiho, but your father refused. How short-sighted of him, you would have done some good down here. Don't get me wrong, your father is a brilliant man and an excellent shogi player, but he made a mistake refusing to let you come down here. Giken was not interested in hearing a response and turned his eye to Naruto. And you, Uzumaki Naruto. The Giken glanced at both Shiho and Shikamaru for a moment, infamous prankster of Konoha. I've heard of many of your exploits. What you did with the Hokage monument. Priceless. That old fart Hiruzen couldn't stop laughing about it the last time he was here. Thank you. Once again his reply went unheard. Shiho, what are these two doing down here? You know this place is a secret. Again the scientist gave no time for response. You two best not tell anyone or we'll all be in big trouble. Now get out. Let's go, Naruto. Right. As the pair walked away to leave, Shiho turned to Giken and said in a rather hurried excitement. Giken-sensei, Uzumaki-san broke the new chakra sensor, his chakra levels must be enormous. Please allow me to run some tests so I can take notes. You two, stop. Giken pulled his beard many times as he grumbled. Uzumaki, did you truly break this prototype device? Giken gestured to the broken device with his cane, to which Naruto nodded. Right then, you're not going anywhere. Naruto groaned audibly. You've got to be kidding me. Sometime later. Are we done yet? No, now be silent, boy. Shikamaru watched with idle amusement as Naruto sat down at a table, shirtless and with many wires attached to his torso and temples, whilst Giken ran tests with several other devices. Don't complain, Naruto, it's least we can do for coming down here. Naruto repeated. You're just standing there and ouch. Put down that cane, old man, I have no trouble with beating on the elderly, ouch. Stop it. Be silent, boy. Giken struck the blonde on his head with his cane again. We're almost done, now be silent or I'll make Shiho give you a physical. Giken-sensei. Shiho's face turned completely red. It wasn't a far stretch from the constant blush she had with a shirtless Naruto around. In a vain attempt to stop ogling the blonde, the young genius examined Naruto's unusual gear. This flak jacket is very unusual, Uzumaki-san. It's heavier and more durable than the one I have at home, plus it has these shoulder guards you don't see on the other models. That flak is from before your time, Shiho, Giken told her, keeping his eyes fixated on the devices before him. That's a first-generation flak. I have one, as would most shinobi my age. They were preceded by the armor shinobi such as the Shidaime and Nidaime used to wear in combat. 5. Where did you get such an incredible memento, Uzumaki-san? The old man gave it to me as a present. Naruto pointed towards the tanto attached to flak jacket. The tanto is from the same era, I think. They both belong to Gigi, ouch. Stop hitting me with that cane. Then stop moving, you insolent child. Giken struck Naruto again just as Shiho pulled the tanto out of its sheath. Incredible. This tanto is undoubtedly very old, but you can see it's been kept in pristine conditioning. Shiho marveled over the ninja dagger, running a hand over its smooth metal. The guard has something inscribed on it. It does. Naruto raised an eyebrow, only to be struck again. I didn't move. I apologize. Giken was completely unrepentant. This is just so much fun, he admitted with a croaky laugh. Naruto looked as he was about to murder the old man. What does it say? Shikamaru asked. It says, the will of fire shall illuminate the village, Giken finished. It's a saying the Shodai used to say a lot. Hiruzen was always a sucker for that one. How do you know it's Gigi's? Naruto asked, and force once Giken did not strike him for moving. We talk, Giken replied vaguely. Now then, looks like we're done here. No sooner had he said it, had Naruto taken off the patches, rushed past Shiho to grab his gear and rushed past Shikamaru to drag him out of the room. We'll come by to visit later, Shiho-chan. Why that insolent little Giken-sensei? I'm telling you that old man is batshit crazy, Shika. He must have hit me at least 50 times. Naruto said as they walked down the street, still fiddling with his jackets and pouches. Hey, wait a minute. Naruto reached into his pouch, having felt an odd weight in it, and held up a package of explosive makibishi. Shiho-chan, you're awesome. She snuck those in while Giken was running tests on you, Shikamaru said. Well, thanks for telling me. What if I slipped and fell, huh? It'd be splattered all of the damn place. Shikamaru shrugged, unrepentant. I hate you. They don't work like that. You need to actually hold them before you scatter them, so you can key your chakra to them. Only a significant force like a footstep will trigger them to go off, that or if you just detonate them by channeling your chakra. They work just like exploding tags that way. And when did she tell you all this? While Giken-san was beating you up. You tell anyone that happened and I'll kill you. Who's going to want me as Hokage if they found out an old man beat the shit out of me for an hour straight? Nobody, that's who. You seem to care a lot about what people think of you. Old habits die hard, Naruto grumbled under his breath. What? Naruto got an agitated look in his face. Of course I do, I'm going to be the Hokage someday, aren't I? The people actually need to respect me if I'm going to realize my dream, genius. Right. Ah, screw you. I'm going to train. With that, Naruto took off to the nearest training ground. Shikamaru simply shrugged and went his own way. Ooh. A few hours later Naruto headed back home from the training ground after spending a good few hours on getting down some ninjutsu. With the help of the Kage Bunshin he had gotten down a few simple fire jutsu after realizing he had more or less neglected that element. Though covered in sweat and dirt with a great sense of fatigue, Naruto felt good about himself. He reckoned he could probably destroy the Naruto from a few weeks ago within seconds. He had certainly branched out his ninjutsu like the old man had advised him and now knew at least 5 jutsu of each element, the Shuriken Kage Bunshin and its kunai variation as well as one of his new favorite techniques, the exploding shadow clone. His genjutsu was still rather limited but he would brush up on that in due time. On his way home Naruto stopped by the grocery store. Minutes later he walked out of the small establishment though he didn't get far before a familiar voice called to him. Naruto. Naruto turned around and saw Sakura waving from a distance. Sakura-chan. It only now just hit him how long he hadn't seen his old teammate. It had been a month since he last saw her, Sasuke and Kakashi. What have you been up to? We just got back from a mission to a village not far from here. Just a simple escort mission, nothing too difficult. Sakura prodded the blonde with her elbow as they began walking further down the road. What about you? You're a hotshot chunin now, aren't you? It must be very excited leading your own team. I'm still a rookie, so I won't be leading my own team for a while, Sakura-chan, Naruto told her. As for my team, well, I'm stuck with Shikamaru, a girl as cold as ice, a perverted swordsman and a team leader with a knack for explosions and a giant stick up his ass. Trouble in paradise. Sakura cheekily quipped. What makes you think being a chunin is paradise in the first place? Naruto asked with a shake of his head. It's mostly scout missions and running errands for rookies like me. To be perfectly honest, I'm really starting to miss you guys, even Sasuke. Sakura smiled kindly as they both felt a wave of nostalgia. So, this team leader of yours doesn't like you, does he? It borderlines on hatred, Naruto replied. Oh, it can't be that bad, Sakura firmly shook her head decisively. You always seem to bring the best out of people, Naruto, so give it some time and he'll come around, they all will. Naruto was taken aback by that for a moment. Sakura was never this nice to him before. Maybe it was the nostalgia in the air, maybe she'd done some growing up of her own in the last few weeks or maybe it was that Naruto had finally earned her respect after saving her from Gaara. Well, thanks, Sakura-chan. That means a lot to me coming from you. Don't mention it, Naruto. They fell silent for the next few minutes as they walked side by side down the road. It wasn't until Sakura's route home took her right his straight on when they stopped. See ya, Sakura-chan. It's been nice catching up. Yeah, you too. Naruto held up his hand in greeting, waving over his shoulder as he continued his path to the apartment. Naruto. The blonde turned around with a quizzical expression. What is it, Sakura-chan? I never got the chance to thank you properly for saving me. Judging by her expression, Naruto could tell how this had been eating at her for a while now. So, I wanted to say thank you. Don't mention it, Sakura-chan. You would have done the same for me. Naruto smiled at her reassuringly. It wasn't until Sakura was left to her own devices, she sighed with a sense of frustration. That's the thing, Naruto, I don't think I would've. I'm just so weak. Ooh. The week of downtime went by quicker than Naruto had expected or appreciated. For the most part their missions could be done within a few minutes with the right amount of teamwork, but with Naruto and Shikamaru being rookies and Tsurugaku not particularly liking either of them, they were left to the majority of the work whilst the other three took it easy. Luckily for Naruto though, he usually managed to finish sooner than they did with his Kage Bunshin technique and thus would be off to the training grounds early whilst his army of Kage Bunshin took care of his and Shikamaru's workload. On their last day of the downtime, Tsurugaku had taken it to himself to devise a training course with his sabotage and trap setting expertise. Currently, they were going a border patrol simulated mission and were shifting through formations as contraptions created by Tsurugaku set off and launched projectiles at them. Formation D4, keep moving. Tsurugaku shouted, his hands in the ram hand seal. A strange contraption that oddly resembled a giant catapult sling hybrid launched a volley of shuriken towards Naruto, Shikamaru, Hayase and Rei. Naruto shifted forward with two kunai held in reverse grip and deflected the projectiles coming his and Rei's direction, who as their medic had to be protected at all times. Sarugaku ran next to the team on ground level as they continued to hop from branch to branch. Good. Now, move to formation A5. In the distance, Sarugaku had strategically placed straw dolls with crudely carved Iwa headbands as though they were going to ambush them. Naruto threw a volley of kunai and struck 3 down whilst he continued to defend Rei, being charged with her guard. It was extremely boring compared to Hayase's role of main offense as he was considered the strongest on their team by their TL. Hayase did an unnecessary front flip as he threw 2 handfuls of shuriken. Naruto, despite himself, had to admit that was kind of cool. He's an cocky bastard but he's got skill, Naruto thought as the senior Chunin deflected an entire volley of kunai by himself with but one of his dual kodachi. Hayase, deflate your ego. Allow Nara and Uzumaki to help you deflect projectiles, you're going to miss 1 or 2 at some point and that can result in death or injury. You know that is unacceptable. For all his faults, Sarugaku knew what he was talking about. They shared a bond of mutual dislike. Naruto knew their TL was at least competent. Even if he regarded Naruto as nothing but a talentless and insubordinate braggart. I'll be fine, Hayase shouted back. It was just as he said it when another volley came their way, quicker than before, and Hayase failed to act on time. However, Naruto's instincts kicked in and within seconds, he grabbed onto Rei's blow and flung her towards Shikamaru who barely caught her, thrust out his palms in front of him with chakra racing down his arms. Futon. Repusho. The wind blasted from his hands and launched Naruto backwards with incredible force, completely blasting the lethal projectiles off course. Naruto spun violently through the air, and grunted as he broke through a thick branch, but he recovered and flipped whilst midair and planted his feet firmly against a tree. Luckily the thick body armor of his flak jacket took the brunt of the damage. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed only momentarily. He didn't need his IQ of over 200 to realize Naruto had changed a lot in the way he carried himself and acted, but he hadn't anticipated witnessing a new jutsu so soon, considering it had barely been a month since they got promoted. Regardless, the shadow user smiled lazily at the blonde and gave him thumbs up. Nice one, Naruto. Rei was his side instantly and reached for field kit. Naruto held up his hand, noting with some curiosity Rei had called him by his first name for the first time. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. You're bleeding. Rei pulled his hand closer to examine the piece of wood lodged into his forearm. We need to treat this. A few inches down and it would have spliced an artery. Naruto grimaced. The wound was about to close up seamlessly before her eyes any second now. If only he had a means of distracting her. Uzumaki. How did you do that? For once, Naruto was glad Sarugaku was such an ass. What are you talking about? Your file didn't say anything about you being able to perform such techniques. Explain yourself. Sarugaku demanded loudly, giving Naruto an opportunity to withdraw his hand from Rei's absent-minded grip. Rei glared at the team leader. Sarugaku Taicho, what does it matter? He saved us both doing it and got injured. There's a lot I can do that isn't in that file you got on me, Sarugaku-senpai. Naruto took great pleasure in the look of outrage in Sarugaku's face. Maybe if you took the time to properly assess me instead of dismissing me as a no-good troublemaker from day one, you would know what I'm capable of. Did you know about this? Sarugaku barked at Shikamaru. The shadow user calmly shook his head. This is the first time I've seen him perform any elemental ninjutsu. He usually sticks to taijutsu and Rei, tend to Uzumaki's wound and patch him up. I want to see what else he's capable of. Sarugaku Taicho. Sarugaku matched her glare with his own. Rei, I will not tolerate any insubordination on my team. You have your orders. It's a work in progress, Naruto lied. He sure as hell was not going to have a show and tell and show his teammates all of his jutsu. The Kage Bunshin training method, as absolute torturous the mental fatigue was an incredible way of learning new jutsu. In the few hours Naruto could scrape together to train between missions, he had learned quite a few, with well over 3,000 hours of work divided amongst ninjutsu, fuinjutsu and even a little on genjutsu. Naruto was also starting to get the hang of chakra control applications, such as straightening metal, and his chakra control overall have improved because of it. This train of thought got him thinking, I should try a hand at summoning Gamabunta in one go. It usually takes me a few tries, but I'm sure I'll get the hang of it. I'm just glad you were on top of your game there, Uzumaki. Hayase scratched his cheek. I'm always on top of my game, Naruto shot back. Sarugaku opened his mouth to speak again, but Shikamaru got their attention. Guys, the shadow user spoke, idly staring to the sky. I think we're going to have to cut training short. It looks like we've been called for a mission. Naruto looked up into the sky and found a messenger hawk circling above them, cawing loudly as it waited for one of them to stretch out their arm. The bird perched on Sarugaku's wrist moments later and held out its leg to the Chunin. Sarugaku took the mission scroll of the bird and unfurled it as the hawk took off. A few moments of silence went by as Sarugaku read the scroll, the rest eyeing him intently and waiting for him to fill them in. When Sarugaku spoke, his voice was audibly shaking with excitement. It seems we have been called for a special mission ordered to us directly by our platoon leader, Sarugaku told them. The report we sent in has set off some flags, and we've been ordered to set out for Tanzaku-gai immediately. What, Tanzaku-gai? Hayase repeated. Yes, the police force of Tanzaku-gai may have been fudging the paperwork in regards to criminality. The 3 Kuroda Gumi corpses we found turned out to be the bosses of the Kuroda Gumi, yet there was not a single report about their disappearances or deaths. We've been tasked to investigate the matter, Sarugaki smirked. This is a B-ranked mission. Naruto was relieved it wouldn't be straight back to scouting missions. Sarugaku rolled up the scroll with a serious expression, frowning slightly. The sun is already going down, so we'll have to move quickly. We will meet at the northern gate in 30 minutes, pack for at least a week. Dismissed. Sarugaku, Hayase and Rei promptly disappeared with Shunshuns, leaving Naruto and Shikamaru in the training ground. We really need to learn that jutsu. Anyway, I'll see you at the gate, Shika. What about your arm? Naruto waved off his concerns with a shrug. It's fine, don't worry about it. The shadow user shrugged. Suit yourself. I'll see you there. Naruto gave no response and immediately took off into his own direction. Author's notes. I apologize for the hold-up, but the response to Chapter 1 was so overwhelming that for a while I didn't think I could top that. Nor did I trust myself with the material I had at the time, as I didn't want the follow-up chapter be such a flop you guys would drop this story like a brick. Anyway, I'm back and I took my time to plan out the story properly, and though not everything is set in stone, I hope you guys will stick around. I couldn't be happier with the response to Chapter 1 and I look forward to your reviews. Here's hoping you like the appearances of Shiho and Giken. OC, they'll be recurring characters for the remainder of the story. Also, what did you guys think about what I've done so far with Konoha's military structure? I'm trying to portray the most realistic sense of military I can without making it look too modern. I'll expand more on that as the story progresses. Next chapter we'll see more of Naruto's new skills and after that some story development. Don't forget to the review. Notes. 1. I always found it strange how the characters in Naruto could travel from one country to another within a day, especially if you look at the maps they print in the data books. So, in this story they'll travel distance at a more realistic pace. 2. I've decided to establish the worth of the Ryo as 10 Ryo being equal to £1, dollar, etc. So, 200 Ryo would equal to $20 in with e-currency. Yes, this also means high bounties will cut down, so awesome as 50 million Ryo bounty will now be 5. 3. That's right, there's a new genius in town, Shikamaru. I think y'all can guess where this is going, and no, that isn't all I have in store for Shiho. 4. Shikamaru's actual ninja registration code is revealed in the data books. 5. Just adding a little fandom history to the story. If you guys forgot what Naruto's flak jacket looks like, just go to the Naruto Wikipedia and search, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Ninja. You'll see a picture of an adult Naruto wearing the standard Jonin uniform but with a different flak jacket, the very same he wears in this story. That was part 1 of What If Hiruzen survived and acknowledged Naruto's greatness. If you enjoyed this twist, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Fox Fan Fiction for more Naruto What If stories.